A crime that shocked Southwest Florida and made news across the nation. The murder of Bonita Springs doctor Teresa Sievers. Two men are charged in connection with her death, but there could be more and more to the story. We go one-on-one with Sheriff Mike Scott, in depth in our studio for a sit-down interview. He talks about getting justice for Teresa.
The discovery does implicate Mark Sievers and does speak to suspicions that surround him.
And going, gone. This year's Naples Winter Wine Fest is in the books. We're looking at the lasting legacy the millions it raised will leave behind. Plus, sweet memories, a museum exhibit that will make you hungry for days gone by. A closer look in the ties that bind. I'm Amy Osher. Thanks for joining us. We'll also have a commentary from Alan Bartlett. That's all coming up. Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. Her husband and two young daughters were out of town when Dr. Teresa Sievers was murdered in her Bonita Springs home. From the start, this case sent out shockwaves. Who she was, how she died, and who may be behind her death. Here's what we know so far. A beloved doctor, beautiful wife, and loving mother. By outward appearances, Teresa Sievers had it all. But her gruesome death revealed a different story. The couple's life was not what it seemed. Their holistic medical practice was going broke. The marriage was plagued by infidelities. And someone who knew her is now charged with her murder. Sievers' body, beaten by a hammer, was found inside her Bonita Springs home last June. Early on, theories swirled on the internet that she was one of several holistic doctors who died under mysterious circumstances. But in July, tips led detectives to Missouri and a man connected to Sievers' husband, Mark. By November, two men were charged in connection with the killing: Jimmy Rogers and Mark Sievers' childhood friend, Curtis Wright. Investigators say they drove to Florida to kill the doctor while her family was out of town. Legal documents turned over by the state suggest Sievers' husband, Mark, plotted her death. He has not been arrested. That leaves one more question mark hanging over this case. I got the chance to sit down with Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott. He granted us a rare behind-the-headlines look at this investigation, seeking justice for Teresa. The Teresa Sievers case generated so much interest. Why do you think that was, and at what point in your investigation did you realize that this was going to touch off a lot of interest?
I think early on people sensed that there was a little something more to this. The fact that her family was out of town, she had no sooner gotten home when obviously the crime occurred. I think people started to put two and two together very, very quickly and suspect that maybe there was a lot more to the story. And I think that typically people expect these violent acts to occur perhaps between, gang wars or drug wars, or not so much a upscale neighborhood with a medical doctor. I think a lot of that played into it.
Now, early on, too, do you think that it factored into it that there were a lot of conspiracy theories going on because other doctors related to holistic medicine were supposedly showing up either missing or died under mysterious circumstances?
That's absolutely correct. In fact, I was asked about that many times as well. Now, one of those that you refer to was actually a suicide, was deemed to be a suicide. So that sort of took a little wind out of those sails. But naturally, anytime there's a trend or a pattern, or an apparent trend or pattern, people would perhaps try to read between some of those lines. Obviously, we go where the evidence takes us. We knew a lot early on that we couldn't share simply because we just couldn't do that. About the crime scene itself, now information has since come out to be public record that it was in fact a staged scene. They did a good job, Wright and Rogers, of covering their tracks and trying to throw us off, if you will.
They always say that sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good. How much did luck play a factor? Because people in Missouri came forward with tips pretty early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we always solicit help from the community. I mean, that's something that we always want and need. Again, there was a mountain of evidence left at the scene that was being processed as well. Some of that evidence, unfortunately, takes time to process. Some of the DNA samples, some of the dander and such from pets and otherwise can take months. And so that's time that's wasting. If we can get other tips from the community in between and in advance of that evidence coming back, we can move a little more quickly or perhaps get more on track. So some of the information that came out of Missouri early on was helpful, but by and large it was a total body of work, both between the crime scene processing, the initial help that we got from the community, and otherwise, which is why we always solicit that if we can, tips from the community.
Okay, and we're talking about the two arrested suspects thus far, Jimmy Rogers and Curtis Wright. You mentioned that they did a lot to cover their tracks. Would it have been more difficult and time-consuming if people that knew them in Missouri had not stepped forward with some information as early on, though, as they did?
Oh, I think it would have been, but there were things also early on that didn't add up. You know, again, without getting, it's such a fine line between talking too much about it and not enough, but simply to say, as I referred to the digital footprint, regardless of who said what at any time, we quickly got into a digital footprint with the phones that we recovered from Dr. Sievers, from her husband Mark Sievers, and from the business and otherwise. So whether that be computer, texting, you know, Wi-Fi connections, the initial evidence that was gathered before we had spoken to anybody other than Mark Sievers.
Was he cooperating early on?
Early, but very early, and then that stopped pretty quickly.
Now, how difficult is it for you in your investigation when there have been some arrests made and they, with the discovery that's already been released thus far, there's a lot of implications of Mark Sievers, but he's not been arrested. So I imagine you have a concurrent investigation still going on?
Absolutely, very much an active investigation going on, and in some ways it plays both ways. Once discovery comes out, you're right, people know more about what we know. Up to that point, I can tell you that up to that point, Rogers and Wright thought that all we had was a grainy photo of them in the Walmart here. You know, proximate to the crime scene. Now they know that we can tell pretty much everybody what they ate for lunch on their trip back and forth. I think that what happened here simply is a case of people who did put so much planning into not getting caught that there was no planning on what happens if we do get caught. And you mentioned that the discovery does implicate Mark Sievers and does speak to suspicions that surround him. And as I've said from almost day one, he has been in the envelope of suspicion.
Is he not cooperating now at all?
Well, I guess it depends on, you know, what cooperating means. We can communicate through an attorney. I would suppose non-cooperative would be a much better way to describe it.
And looking at charges now that are second-degree murder, should we expect that there might be a first-degree murder charge also brought down in this case?
When I think about it, we have Mr. Rogers sitting in a federal prison in Missouri. We have Wright sitting in our jail in Lee County. These people are all separated now. They can no longer communicate. Nobody knows what the other one is saying. Nobody knows what the other one is doing. And that's a position where sometimes the snakes start to bite each other. You want to charge someone as quickly as possible with something that's probable cause supports, and get them in custody, and then work it from there. And charges, to answer your question, Amy, charges may well change in that case.
And be additional if Mark Sievers gets arrested or anybody else additionally?
Correct, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. We would never close the door. We've never implied in any way, shape, or form that this was over, you know, and moving on to the next case. We have maintained from day one that this is active, ongoing. It's taken many, many different turns. And frankly, there's a lot of information that's still not out. There's a lot of the pending investigation that we still don't have to release and that we likely will not release until we think it's beneficial to us and, or more importantly, the case itself.
And is he under surveillance at this time?
Well, I can't speak to that specifically. I mean, I know the answer to the question naturally, but let's just say that he remains a person of interest in the envelope of suspicion. And
if you look at some of the stuff that was released in Discovery, that maybe the outside view that they had such an idyllic life and a perfect life, that kind of got knocked down quite a bit as well by some of their personal life and issues. Did that cloud the issue at all, or did it maybe expand it in width of maybe motives or things like that?
Well, we knew that, what you're referring to, we knew that moments after the homicide was discovered. I mean, very, very, very soon after looking at, again, the digital footprint, we knew that such was not the case, this sort of, you know, happy, you know, everything's more traditional, let's say. I'm not passing judgment, but clearly the evidence is overwhelming that it was not somewhat of a traditional relationship.
Did that cloud it though? Maybe thinking that there's now a bigger cast of characters that may have been playing into this?
Absolutely, of course. That and the fact that part of her practice had to do with hormonal therapy, transgender community. So now you have this broad group of outside of the marriage, let's say, in terms of personal life. And you also have the professional life that touches on many, many different people. Let's face it, one disgruntled patient, one patient whose perhaps hormone therapy is off balance for whatever reason. So, I mean, and I'm talking very early, I'm talking hours and days now after the discovery of the crime, some of these things were already being considered. Knowing the practice that she had, knowing from very preliminary perusal of the digital data, i.e. the cell phones of Mark and Dr. Sievers, that there was much more to their relationship, professionally and personally, than most people would expect. Those are all things, again, that we knew, I would say, hours after the crime.
And you said there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. As evidenced by the fact that a lot of national media, you said some of the national crime shows are interested in this case, but they're kind of holding off a little bit, sensing that there's more to this?
Mm-hmm. Nationally, the predominant interest has been from Nancy Grace, and others like 48 Hours, Discovery, Unsolved Mysteries, and things of that nature have expressed great interest in the case. It's a very fascinating case.
You think there's any kind of big explosive details that have not come out yet that really might even extend the life of interest of this story?
I think so.
Are you going to say anything about them or what nature?
I think not.
But you know, I know it's impossible to say any kind of time frame.
Some of the testing in this case has been groundbreaking. Some of the digital stuff in this case has, frankly, nobody's aware of it ever being done before.
Like what? Can you talk about what type of tests were done? Or
no, not specifically, just to say that it involves the digital platforms of GPS, of cellular, of texting, of tweeting, of you know, Wi-Fi connections, of rating restaurants after you have your meal, and you know, there's just so much that people put their life, including bad guys and girls, put their life on the digital platform. It's fair game, and it's been very helpful in this case.
And lastly, though, do you think we're going to know pretty much all there is to know by the time this is wrapped up?
I think that motives will be very clear. I think that those involved will be very clear. And you know, sort of the who, what, when, and why of this thing, if you will, I think is pretty clear. It's pretty clear to us.
Still to come on Behind the Headlines, Alan Bartlett shares his thoughts in our weekly commentary. And later, a recap from the Naples Winter Wine Fest. Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. Some people have called him our own Andy Rooney. Alan Bartlett is never one to mince words. He shares his opinions in our weekly commentary.
Cases like the horrific killing of Dr. Teresa Sievers in Bonita Springs get the splashy headlines, but any crime can be life-changing for the victim. Victims like the girls who lost their mother in the Sievers case, victims like the police officer, the kids, and other family members of both Naples cops who were involved in the July 2014 domestic shooting in Estero. In the hundreds of cases that don't get this kind of intense media attention, and for those that do, let's take a moment here to be thankful that there's a vast network of Southwest Florida government and nonprofit agencies providing help to those who become crime victims. Your law enforcement agencies have victim advocates who can help and get others involved in helping too. For example, their victim advocate may carry car seats, blankets, and toys with them to help children caught up in a traumatic situation. A Collier County family can turn to Project Help, which provides a 24-hour crisis hotline and many more services. Project Help has access to counselors who speak different languages. It handles calls related to sexual assault, human trafficking, sudden death, suicide prevention, along with helping victims of violent crime. Thank you, Project Help, for being there. The Children's Network of Southwest Florida handles the child welfare system in Lee, Collier, Charlotte, Henry, and Glades counties. It's responsible for more than 1,800 abused and neglected children, and it works with more than 50 social service agencies. Then there are the guardian ad litems, who are trained, volunteer, court-appointed advocates to represent the best interest of children. Guardians ensure the kids are in a safe and permanent home, then monitor their progress. If domestic violence is involved, there is counseling through the Shelter for Abused Women and Children here in Collier County, and in Lee, the Abuse Counseling and Treatment. By no means is this a complete list of all the agencies available to help. If you are ever affected by crime, whether it gets to headlines or not, they're there, and that's the point. If you or a loved one or a friend is ever placed in such a situation, rest assured there are places locally to turn to for help. That's what I'm thinking. Join in the conversation at naplesnews.com.
Thanks, Alan. If you'd like to add your thoughts on this or any other topic, feel free to hit us up. We invite you to write us a letter or leave a comment on our Facebook page. Now it's back to the newsroom for our Editor's Corner.
Thanks, Amy. I'm Greg Hardwick, the sports editor at the Naples Daily News, and a big day all across the country, especially so here in Collier County, where we had some national media for Naples High School's signing. Adam Fisher was there, big crowd.
Yeah.
And we had some excitement actually overnight leading into that.
A lot of excitement. Tuesday night, the day before Wednesday's National Signing Day, we found out Tyler Bird was flipping from Miami, who had been committed to for a year, to Tennessee. Big news in the recruiting crowd. Tyler Bird, obviously number 35 in the nation, according to ESPN. So, a lot of media there at Naples High. This is, I think, the 8th or 9th time I've covered a signing day at Naples High. Biggest crowd I'd seen. Packed auditorium, dozens of media there. So, very interesting. And we were there with video, and here's what Tyler Bird had to say.
Are you surprised this many people are as excited about this decision? I mean, last night I saw your Periscope, you had 2,000. You were a trending topic on Twitter. I mean, does that surprise you, all this attention?
Yeah, really, it does. It was unbelievable to be in that position.
What does that mean to you? I mean, I know you said it's a lot of pressure. Does that make you feel good to know that this many people care about you and where you're going?
Yes, it does feel good because many people that like the decision dislike the decision.
Yeah.
So.
And what specifically did you like about Tennessee? I mean, I know Carlin's going up there, but when you were up there, what would you like about it, the campus and the program that made you want to go there?
I like the campus. The campus is beautiful. I love the coaching staff is a great coaching staff. They're all great men of faith, and all those things collectively made me decide on Tennessee.
And lastly, I mean, 4 years at Naples High is a long time. What stands out to you the most as you head off to college?
How prepared I did not realize that Naples High football got you for college.
And Tyler actually announced that live on Periscope, obviously the live video streaming app, from his Twitter feed. So that was interesting. He joins Naples running back Carlin Filsamy as going up there to Tennessee. So two of the area's biggest recruits going to Tennessee this year.
And Carlin had a little piece to do with how Tyler ended up there, didn't he?
Yeah, they lived together, Carlin and Tyler Bird, and he was big promoting him. He made him a sign that says he volunteered to ask him to come play with them because you're the only 10 I see, which is very interesting.
But that wasn't the only signing. We had signings all across Collier County and South Lee. We had reporters and videographers and photographers shooting them, and had all that online on naplesnews.com and in the print edition of Thursday's Naples Daily News.
Cheers to the Naples Winter Wine Fest. The 16th annual event brought in millions for local children's charities. Here's some of the highlights from the Naples Daily News' Mel Leonore.
Who wants to set us off here? There's a bid, 157, sir. I'll take $100,000 off you. 110, 120.
Bidding was fast and furious, with several racy cars on the auction block. The highest bid went for the first of its kind Rolls-Royce Dawn for $750,000. A customized Ferrari sold for $650,000. The live auction was the high point of the 3-day wine fest. Guests from around the world fought over lots including exclusive wine and travel experiences, dazzling art pieces, and limited edition cars. Organizers tallied the totals and say the event earned just over $11 million. The Naples Winter Wine Festival has supported 40 nonprofits helping local kids, to date donating more than $146 million to charity.
And finally, a tasty tidbit to end the show. They say the kitchen is the heart of a home. While we're not preparing anything to eat, a new museum exhibit may stir up some fond memories. The Naples Daily News' Harriet Heithouse has more in her Artitude report.
Hi, I'm Harriet Heithouse with the Naples Daily News, and I'm with Jennifer Guida from the Collier County Museum. Jennifer is the curator of collections. And she has just a wonderful collection to show. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, the exhibit is called Apron Strings Ties to the Past, and it was organized by the Mid-American Arts Alliance. And we have it here from the end of this month until March the 16th. And we're happy you came today to see the exhibit, so we can have a look at some of the casework.
Well, tell us why aprons?
Well, I think kind of a universal topic that ties everybody together is ultimately food. So, and food preparation. And I think this is a nice collection, an example of, you know, different type of aprons. We have men's aprons, children's aprons, women's aprons, and aprons that just would have been sold for tourist trade.
Why don't we take a look at a few of the aprons now?
Sure. Well, these two examples here would have been Depression era aprons. They're very delicate, which is why we chose to enclose them. And the museum added some colorful Depression wear cups here to kind of bring some color into the exhibit. But you can see the delicate embroidery on the edges there.
Is that hand embroidery?
Yes, it is.
My goodness.
All right, so this would have been two examples of aprons that would have sold for tourists. Something else that would have been for tourist trade would have been the black Seminole patchwork apron there in the middle of the wall.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Now we have some really practical aprons over here. There's one, I think, made with a dish towel.
Yes, we have a dish rag apron that's red, white, and blue.
And over here are the fun aprons.
Yes, we have a sunbonnet apron. And then kind of a few comical ones, some gentlemen's aprons, one pair that's fashioned out of boxer shorts, more of a work apron where they would have, you know, placed some nails. It's from a lumber company. And then it's appropriate here in Southwest Florida that we have a fisherman's apron.
Of course, of course.
And the exhibit is here until March 16th.
What are your hours?
We are Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer,
Thank
for taking
you.
the time. There's more here for people to see.
That will do it for this edition of Behind the Headlines. Tell your friends about Southwest Florida's only local news magazine. You can rewatch and share this show by going to naplesnews.com or like us on Facebook. I'm Amy Osher. We'll see you back here next week.